Hello. It's been a while. For those who recognize my voice, this is Yuri. So for those who didn't already know, or those who remember, I started modding Train Sim World around July 2018. It was my first foray into that, because barely anyone had done anything. And as things picked up, and as the small ragtag group of people that we were figured out how to make this work, and started showcasing how we could make modding work for other people, I found out that instead of modding things for Run 8, TSW became my passion. That passion has lasted for the last 5 years. Until November this past year. For those who wonder why you don't see streams of me with TSW anymore, or hear that I'm working on anything, it's because I'm not. I quit. Between the add-on manager and the editor, and the lack of ability to cook, and all the mistakes that Dovetail had made, it became too much. So I left. But that's not why I'm making this video. It partially is. I still had unfinished work. And I want people to be able to experience that work in full. Because I don't want it to go to waste. I spent so long working on this stuff, and I want the community to be able to... I want the community to be able to experience it. Not just for my sake, but for theirs. And especially the US community. They've been hurting for a long time. So I'm going to go through and showcase everything that I've done and everything that could have been. And I want to make this clear for everyone watching this. Whatever you see in this video, it's a mod. If you want to resurrect it, let me know. I'll give you everything I can to make sure that this stuff makes it through to TSW4 on someone else's hand. Because I don't want to see it fade away. So I'll start with a few of the passion projects that did make it out. And then what's still left to release. The last set of standalone engines I made were these: the Clinchfield Railroad Black F7 and the Gray ST40. I never quite finished the substitution. It works somewhat, but it doesn't work on every formation. I want to at least go back and fix that. If any updates get pushed to any of my mods you see, they'll only be for TSW3. I can't provide support for TSW4. I'm sorry. So, the last passion project to come out the door, it will be this month, is one that's been done for a while. So, for those who followed me on the Discord and those who saw my streams, I used to make scenarios for TSW, but none of them ever made it out to public because they were never finished. I started trying to recreate some of them in TSW4, and I'll happily send those files over to anyone who wants to finish them. I also like to mention that this menu music mod will go up. I don't know if it'll ever work in 4, and it works in 3, and it's one of my favorite little things I've ever made for TSW 3. So this is the last project that's ever going out the door for me for TSW 3, at least as a locomotive. I made this back in TSW 1 and spent about 60 hours on this reskin after the DLC released. And that was it. And then I ported it to TSW 2, and this past year I spent and made time to make this standalone so that you could run this and the Caltrain 1 at the same time without replacing anything. This was one of my biggest passion projects ever. I drove myself insane trying to get this reskin done in TSW1, to the point I drove myself to tears to make this thing work. I'm going to try and, at least in an official editor, make a pair of formations for this, so you at least have something when you spawn it in. This should work in the planner, God mode, and everything else of TSW if you want to use it for your own projects. I will include the project files so you can put them in your editor and use it wherever you need to. This is a standalone unit. It shares the same physics and collision models and other things and sounds from the Caltrain MP15, so you still need that to have it work. But other than that, it's completely standalone. I designed it for those who have Amtrak routes if you want to have a switcher, because the SW1000R is dead and gone. This is one of a few of the scenarios that I was working on. One of the last ones that I showed off publicly, called Yard Goat Gruff. You would run a switcher from here to pick up a dead Northeast Regional with a failed, I don't remember exactly what failed, but you would head down and grab one here, and a cello would cut you off. You'd bring it down to Southampton Yard, run back around, grab a set of ballast hoppers, I apologize for that, something got in the way. I'm sorry, this video isn't very professional. I have other things going on in life. But you would grab these you'd bring it to this yard, hook up and grab these ballast hoppers, and head down to Reedville, where you'd store them for a ballast operation. Then you'd proceed all the way to Pawtucket Yard, where they set out a failed AM fleet because of a hot box. It's been since repaired. You're going to run down here, grab it, and then run all the way back up to Southampton. The goal was to have a copied part of Brandon's timetable from the time frame of this scenario, so that you would have serious traffic the whole way up and the whole way down. Porting that over would have taken quite a long time, and I wasn't sure if I should bullshit in AI, or I should try and keep to a proper schedule. I wasn't sure if people were going to care that much. This one, I'd say, with the exception of the AI, the main player service was about 50% done. I got the train down to Pawtucket, but never to collect the AM fleet and return home. Everything else works. This Resume Last Played was one of the scenarios that I worked the hardest on, because the limitations Dovetail set forth in Train Sim World made the original scenario impossible, because, contrary to popular belief, the physics and adhesion for US locomotives is not what it should be. This was a heavy traffic where you would take a hot shot intermodal up from Dyke Siding all the way to Barstow, dealing with traffic along the way in a terrible storm. and you're stuck holding for a train at the bottom, so you have to really tug hard to get this moving. It would have required a fair bit of DLC, many freight cars from many DLCs. It would have required Sherman Hill and Cajon Pass at the very least, but I wanted to add more, so it required Oakville, and I think it required Cane Creek, possibly, and possibly Sand Patch. So I just wanted to demonstrate. This one was never finished, and the last time I tried it, you start here. This train is incredibly long, but not compared to the real one. It's only 6,428.5 tons. In reality, this train could be almost 8,000, 10,000 tons and still move. That's not possible in TSW. So, I had to shorten the train and make it somewhat unrealistic in order to make it so the player could actually move. Otherwise, you would never move from this spot. I planned out plenty of AI, which, with the exception of one of them going backwards, all worked. I got as far as probably just before Silverwood, before I had my last live stream on it, or my last progress check. I've never made it the entire way. But I spent a long time working on this timetable. And there's notes and everything written down on this timetable so that I could keep track of what I needed to do. I'll go through all of the scenarios that I had planned. So Stack Up and Yard Goat Gruff are two of them. There were more, and I'm trying to remember each route that I had did this on. Please bear with me. One that's not it doesn't exist yet. Fubian brought back Right Round from Train Sim World 1 on NEC New York using Long Island Railroad. I apologize, but my cat is trying to destroy my apartment and it is making it near impossible to do anything in my home right now. Fubian restored Right Round for at least TSW 2 because none of us expected that TSW 3 would come and that TSW would eventually become a yearly installment shit show that is doomed for the rest of its existence. So I made a scenario which isn't here. I had worked on adding. He made Right Round using Long Island Railroad. We were going to restore it for New York Trenton as well. And with the cab car restored, I was going to bring back to front. And we were going to restore New York Nuisance, which I had tried to restore the timetable on, but I never finished the AI. It was technically done. But I don't think it'll ever see a release unless Fubian ports everything back over to TSW 4. Back to Front was going to be on your New York Nuisance and hopefully Right Round, and probably Keystone Cutting if I ever got around to it. Another one of my big projects that I did, while it's a small scenario, it took a lot of work to make this possible, is the pilot. People always talk about on Long Island Railroad how there's missing freight traffic from New York and Atlantic Railway. I did my best with the limited stock we have to let you experience that, using part of the line that's in the game, using unused portals and paths that have never been explored by the player. The list of locomotives you see off to the left are fake rail vehicle definition files. Those, the GP4-2NY&A, the DM30AC, and the L3 cab car are null references. There's no trains behind those, but I wanted those to at least show the player that each of the trains you see in this scenario, Might not look like the real world counterparts, but at least you know what the placeholders are for. I spent a lot of time working on this one, and New York Nuisance was fixed. I had forgotten that we had made it for Long Island Railroad. This, I wanted to release, and there's a chance that if Fubian ever fixes the dialogue and does a few other things, maybe we can get this out the door, but again, it'll never see the light of day for TSW 4 unless somebody takes control of that themselves. But I wanted to at least show people a piece of TSW1 history, and it will use my MP15 specifically because that's all we have. There were other scenarios, and I'm trying to go through all of them. Unfortunately, one of them I can't show because I only ever got it working in TSW4, and so I don't have TSW4 anymore. It's uninstalled, so I can't showcase it. And that was known as Short Change Hero for Horseshoe Curve, where you used a GP38-2 Longwood 4 to rescue an Amtrak train at Altoona and bring it to Johnstown. So it gave you some LHF running. The first scenarios I ever made were these, and they're two of the ones that I'm most passionate about because one of them never got finished and the other one is basically done. I hope maybe someday it gets released. Where you were doing a run between Cumberland and the Rockwood Passing sighting that never gets used by the player. The old mountain sub-portals come into play, and I tried to put in as much unique AI as possible. This also utilized something known as Better SPG, which was a mod where I attempted to redo all of the freight formations to be far more realistic, increasing the amount of variety you had on your train so they didn't look uniform. It required a lot of DLC, but that was the only way to do it, because if I added substitution, you'd have nothing but empty trains, and I hated the idea that anyone that was running my mods would have to deal with plenty of variety on their trains, but have their trains weigh only 2,000 tons. That never sat right with me. So just like old times, does work. Double Black Diamond has never been completed, even by me. The last live stream of it, around right after TSW3 came out, is the last time I ever ran this scenario, and I got halfway through it. I blew a signal and broke the scenario, but if you've ever played the U876 Coal Run, which is 4 parts, I combined all 4 parts into one. And you're dealing with that and a ton of AI traffic in a blizzard. I thought that might interest some people. I asked people a long time ago if they wanted to see that, and that seemed to be the consensus. Diversionary Tactics was another scenario, which was never made it in here, but was meant to use Track 3, which, while it doesn't really have scenery, has all its track and signaling in Sherman Hill. I wanted people to be able to utilize it. Short Change Hero doesn't exist on here. Another one was Deadhead Shed, which only existed after TSW4. And that allows you to take a pair of GP9s and bring the Class 66s to the port where they'd get shipped over from Ontario to the UK, which is a real thing that happened. It does somewhat work, and there is a gameplay video I have left over that I could put on my channel to showcase what could have been. Again, if anyone wants any of these files to see if they can take a crack at it, by all means, let me know, and I will send you what you need. Other things, I do have to go to a random route to showcase this next one. This was a project that I spent a grand total of, I'd say, if I add up all the total hours, probably over 20-30 hours on. And while it might not look like much, the amount of work that went into this behind the scenes was immense. And it is the one pack that I will not give the community to port over. This is the one I said I would allow you guys to use anything of mine to port it over, because I'm giving permission, because I want people to use this stuff and not have it go to waste. But this pack dies with me. And I may still, if I can find the motivation to, I may still finish it and release it for TSW 3. But if you want to put it in 4, you're on your own. When the BNSF SD70 Ace came out, this has a little bit of a story to it. I did a review on it, and I didn't think much of it, but it gave us several colored center beams. And I wanted to increase the variety of freight cars, so I set forth to hex edit and make duplicates and edit each of these center beams to have proper road names, in some cases adjusted colors, and have at least 8 different center beams in this pack, along with the files so people could use them in the editor, and have a decent variety of freight cars for once, because Dovetail is very bad at doing that for US freight cars, and it very much annoys me. So I made liveries for each of these, which I'm going to showcase right now, so bear with me. This pack I still want to finish, so nobody gets their hands on this. Everything else that I've worked on, with the exception of the M-Trick MP15 when it gets ported, every other mod I've made, with the exception of this, is fair game. If you want to port it, go for it. So these were the 3 that existed in game, along with the default yellow one we've all seen. I spent time redoing the logos, the road names, and in some cases, I believe I adjusted the color on this one. I spent time editing all of these so that they would be their own models and schemes, so that things would work. At least if I remember correctly, I'm trying to remember. A lot of work went behind the scenes. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of using a hex editor to edit like 35 files over and over again. So you had these 3, and then this one was a special standalone that I made that's entirely new. It uses the files from the other ones, but this is an entirely new unit, so you would get, at the moment, 4 in this pack, as opposed to 3. Which is one that's very rare, but you see it in the Northeast, which is the black CSX center beam, and that's why you can tell in God mode why the name is a little bit different. The default one that people have come to know is this, which I made a reskin for a long time ago in TSW1 for TTX. And that mod has been out for a long time. If anyone else wanted to port over, I'm sorry, this is kind of off the cuff, so I'm trying to remember exactly the things that I did that were unfinished. Oh, that's another thing. Fubian, I helped with the substitution part of this. The rest is Fubian. This doesn't work in TSW4. This was what DTG Alex made on a Let's Create a Locomotive stream. It fully works, utilizes files from the BNSF SD40-2 on Cajon Pass, and that's all you need to get it working. As to the future of whether or not it will ever work in Train Sim World 4, the world may never know. I also tried to restore something we lost long ago. For those who are sharp-eyed, you may notice from TSW 1 to TSW 2 we lost a sand patch paint scheme. We had YN2, even though sometimes it was broken, and we had YN3B, the boxcar logo. Those who owned NEC New York may have noticed a third scheme that Dovetail never ported. When NEC New York was abandoned, so was this scheme. I've spent time trying to restore it. This is supposed to have been my first port into TSW4, but after a lot of work with KitKat, it doesn't seem like it's ever going to fully work in Train Sim World 4 ever again. The add-on manager will not let this locomotive exist in Train Sim World 4. It's not my fault, it's not any other modder's fault, it's entirely on Dovetail, and until they remove that accursed thing from Train Sim World 4, I fear a lot more mods will cease to exist. But this is entirely separate from the YN2 and YN3s. A couple other things. The AC6000 has been released, and that one, if people want to port that, it should be relatively easy. The other thing, I talked about better SPG, and I wanted to showcase a little bit of what that actually looks like for freight car variety. And I had 3 planned: better SPG, better HSC, and at one point better OSD for Oakville to get rid of all the substitution-based freight that's completely empty. Better SPG and better HSC are the only things that ever had any work on them, with the exception of a singular test consist for Cajon under better CJP. This was an extremely, contrary to what people think for making formations, this is an extremely big undertaking in making all these formations, because I need them to be of a decent variety but have a decent weight and have the consist be thought out properly. And that actually takes a lot of time, which is why these never made it out the door. Better HSC is a little bit weird because it uses a hex-edited version of Skyhook's timetable to alias my formations. Instead of having direct replacements of the original formations, I made a hex edit so that only the timetable uses my new formations instead of outright replacing entire formations. So those who want to use the vanilla formations can do so. It means, but the unfortunate side effect is that the better HSC formations will never be spawnable via God mode. Now, this is, I believe, an example of that consist. Here's the AC6000, this is already out. Should be relatively easy for people to port if they want to. Now, I believe this consist is a bad example. There's 2 kinds of consists for sand patch, and this is the bad one. There is... I'm going to try and find it momentarily, just bear with me. Train Sim World. Cumberland to Willard. I believe it's this. There's 2 freight formations that Sandpatch uses, a 40 wagon loaded version 1 and a 40 wagon loaded version 2. And one of them I thought I had modified, but I guess I never did. These better SPG formations have existed since TSW2. A lot of these mods are very old by TSW standards because of the simple fact of how much has been rushed out the door. I was expecting TSW2 to last a lot longer, and then we got 3, and I was hoping that that would be the end of it. And then this August, it turns out, what an idiot I was to think that Dovetail would just support a proper version of the game instead of fucking us over every year. What a fool I was. But this is the kind of formation that I wanted to do. So instead of seeing all sand patch, covered hoppers, boxcars, and tank cars, you have things from Caltrain. This I think is a sand patch one. Caltrain. I made multiple schemes for all of the tank cars in the game. I'm working on sending these to Steven Jam so he can make them stand alone in TSW 4. Some of these schemes never came out outside of like the Discord. But I'd like to make that. They're all technically done, but they only support. I wanted one scheme to be supportable across every DLC with a different variant, but I'm not going to do that. It's just too much work. So you have things like Gaddix, so you would have, for example, Sand Patch. UTLX, I think, is King Creek, maybe. You had Roik, so you had that Sand Patch. The NAHX one is King Creek. Center Beams, you had Sherman Hill. Mind you, this was all before Cajon Pass came out, so there's no BNSF equipment. King Creek. Oakville. I believe so. Horseshoe Curve. Or no, that's King Creek. There was Horseshoe Curve stuff, but it got added later. Sherman Hill. So I wanted to increase the variety so it felt like you were actually hauling a decent train. And so that was the passion project for that. Better HSC went much farther, but it was only still in an alpha build. But I want to give people every file. I just have to track down every single thing. But anyone watching this video, go through this entire list, and I'll try and make a list at some point to put in the comments at some point explaining every single project that was still in the works, so you can pick and choose what you want to resurrect. So this will probably be the last thing I'm going to show in this video, because I have to head off to sleep within the next half an hour for work. The reason I have all these other engines is a mod that Triple J 814 put out a while ago, and he's then left the community and then came back, and most of his mods remain uncertain. I'd love to just give them out to the community, but I have a feeling he'll be pissed if I do that, so, you know, I don't know what to tell you people. It wasn't my decision. So I made, of the varieties, I had worked on ethanol trains. I believe those were the next to go. Grain trains, intermodal trains, and manifests. All had new formations to increase variety. And I would have loved to have gone back and redone these intermodal formations to now include the maxi stack 4s from Cajon Pass, because those get used all over the country, not just on BNSF. For example, I deal with them at work all the time, is the BNSF maxi stack 4s. And they're one of the few modeled things in Cajon that I can say whoever modeled them did their homework. I couldn't find anything wrong with them except for the fact that the numbering is not consistent across all 3 units, which is a problem with TSW's numbering system as a whole. This is the largest of the formations. Contrary to what some people think, not all freight formations in Horseshoe Curve are created equal. There's sometimes, with the Jeeps, it's a 30 car, and there is, I believe, 60, 70, and this one, specifically in the timetable, an 80 car manifest. This is the only one in the timetable, is 14G. So I went through and redid every formation to have increased variety, as well as getting rid of the 2-bay hoppers, because 2-bay aggregate hoppers would not go on manifests like this in the way that they were added. You'll see a bunch of other tank cars. This one is white UTLX, is specific to Horseshoe. TILX is specific to Oakville. Gaddix is specific to Sand Patch. NATX is specific to Sherman Hill. Yellow UTLX is specific to, I want to say, Cane Creek. And I included one of the trash wagons because you do see them on Manifest sometimes. So I went through and redid as much of the formations as I could to be somewhat random, but also be somewhat consistent, so it makes sense if you were building a manifest in a yard, so you don't have empty center beams in the middle of a manifest. Especially considering we're on Horseshoe Curve. So those are the freight formation. And again, I want to stress this, unless people redo the whole system, these HSC formations wouldn't appear in God mode. There's no way to summon them in God mode. It's either use them in timetable or they don't exist, because of the weird way that I did this. A lot of the work that I've done behind the scenes for these standalone locomotives, such as the Clinchfield, alternate liveries, or the Santa Fe Classic Freight Pack, was all done by hand. All of that hex editing, which it takes hours and hours and hours of checking over files and individually finding strings of text in each thing and hex editing them and then recompiling everything to make sure it works in the game. And that had a lot of a lot of mistakes in it, which is why it took so long to debug them, because it was all my work and I had to debug my own work. That's also one of the reasons why I kind of stopped modding, was because it became really stressful when I wanted to make a lot of things standalone, but it would take me, up to 3 or 4 hours to port just a piece of rolling stock if I had made a mistake to standalone. It would work, but it wouldn't be easy. The intermodal formations got redone. Also, these containers are out. I think they're supported in Rush Hour, which are the UMAX ones. There's Stax containers too. And NGC made JB Hunt ones and EMP ones. Okay, this may be the one formation that I... Fuck. This is not helping me. The point is, a couple of these intermodal formations have some variety, and I wanted to at least showcase before I turn this video off the last couple things, because this is going to be probably one of the only times that you people are going to see some of these before they get ported. So I want to... Let's use 22K, because I know that works. It's really... I just need to showcase these and the... I'm trying to remember. It should be these and the grain formations, and there's a possibility I did ethanol, but I think ethanol was on the back burner. So it should be, if I didn't screw things up, and I'm praying I didn't screw them up. At some point, there was proper intermodal that had trailers and things mixed in. I guess somehow in this release, that's not happening. Even though I tested it the other day. And it seemed to work fine. Oh, and I fixed the Croxton train that had trash and stuff. I redid that one. So, I think it was 25W. That one has been fixed as well, because it looked really bad, and I wanted to fix it. And then I'll showcase the grain trains, and then that'll probably be it. Again, there's certain work that I can't show off because it was still in progress, and I didn't have it packed up for testing, because it wasn't done far enough. Here we go. I went and redid and added variety to intermodal, so you would have trailers mixed in with intermodal, which is a thing that happens in real life. For those who didn't know my job, I work in the intermodal industry, so dealing with trains of different makeups and stuff is something I deal with every single day. So I took my expertise and my history with working in the industry to create freight consists that could actually happen, because while you can have an all-uniform stack train, that's not always how things work in the real world. And so I had to go through and edit all of this. But now you don't have the weird thing that's half trailers, half weirdly placed trash containers that are meant to be placeholders for international 20-foots. I know some people think that Skyhook put those trash containers there just to have it be a half trash train, but looking into it, it seems they wanted to make those placeholders for real 20-foot international containers that did not exist in the game, that I assume they just didn't have time to make. The other formation that's I didn't showcase is the GP38-2's manifest formation has also been edited. I don't know if I'll do it soon, but I have recordings of at least, I think, a part of Stack Up running, and a part of a quick test video of Deadhead Shed. Oh, there was meant to be one more scenario that I was working on that only existed in TSW 4 called Deja Suvu, which is a pun on Deja Vu, the song from Initial D. And you would run the RSUVU train from Sun Valley to Vulcan on the Antelope Valley line. I wanted it to use AC4400s and a mix of those and SD70 Aces, but those don't work together in DPU modes the way I wanted them to. So it has to be all Aces, which I hate doing, but that also was a work in progress, and those who have seen my channel, the video I pushed my fingers into my eyes, is a test build of that. So even the grain trains got an overhaul, using every single hopper in the game, and I did try my absolute best to make sure every single one of these hoppers was given the proper amount of grain loaded in them so that the train still felt properly weighted. I care a lot about having the trains actually have proper weights when you go to run them, because the whole point of Train Sim World is to feel like you're really running a train. So why would I screw it up and make you feel like you're playing early Train Sim Classic stuff when nothing had any weight, or TSW 1 when freight trains didn't have, when early freight trains like Sandpatch didn't have any weights in any of the cars? I want people to actually feel like they're running a train, not just slot cars. So that's been redone too. This required a lot of DLC, and while I was willing to at least try and substitute specific DLCs so that they were more common for people, I refused to reduce the overall number of DLCs for each of these formations. People wanted variety. They're going to get variety, but they're going to have to pay up to make it happen. I wish they didn't have to give Dovetail money for it, but you know, that's how things are. I also had a plan for maybe a freight scenario with intermodal switching on Rhein-Ruhr-Osten, but I really hate Rhein-Ruhr-Osten. It's a terrible German route. It's also the origin of SIG ID, which those of you who know me really well, is a thing when you fuck up and don't label a signal properly. And on some signals that's not a big deal, but on German ones it says SIG ID on the big plate, which you can see from fucking space. Lucas, since he joined up doing stuff for Dovetail, has ensured that that doesn't happen anymore. Every single signal in a route has an ID, and I'm thankful for that. There's some other mods I couldn't showcase. For those who remember Nexo and his weathered AC4400s, including the CN one, his weathered black and white Bethgons, the shiny Amfleets and dirty ACS64, and in a very rare case, a weathered BR182 and 185, which I'm struggling really hard to find those files again. Those files, if people want them and want them ported over, including his old BNSF BNSF swoosh, Nexo gave me permission back when TSW2 had come out, saying that I had his blessing to port his stuff over. I don't want it to fade away. I spent time in TSW2 trying to make it all work for Rush Hour, and I just never finished it because I wanted to make things all of it perfect. So if there's anything of Nexos that people want to see, the only things that have made it out the door are the AM fleets and the ACS 64. So there's that, and also those variants for New York Trenton are all fucked up, and that's actually Dovetail's fault. The implementation of porting those skins over the New York Trenton stock just ignores the reskins and has really, really bad setup that breaks all of the visuals, especially the cab car, which is a lost cause. So the shiny M fleets and the AC-64, they're not technically my work, they're Nexo's blessing, because after TSW2 was announced, Nexo did not die, but he did not plan on buying TSW2, so I'm one of the only people that still has his work, and I want his legacy to be carried on throughout the generations of Train Sim World, however long this accursed game actually lasts. I think I had one other work in progress thing that I'm trying to remember what it was that I wanted to showcase. In fact, let me open up my projects file really quick and see what the last thing I did was. Because I believe, if I did it right, it should have been... Let me look at this Unreal Pack. I'm doing this in the background, I know it's unprofessional, but I don't remember, it's been a long time since I did this. Also, even though I'm not credited on a lot of them, all the audio that Griggs did for the American locomotives, like the GEs and the F7s and the EMDs, he didn't own anything past like TSW2, so the porting to TSW 3 and 4 has been by yours truly. It doesn't say it on a lot of those, but I've been the one that's porting those over because Griggs is not continuing the journey on Train Sim World. And I will continue if, at least for TSW 4's sake, if TSW 5 comes out, and I pray that such a concept never exists on this planet. If that breaks everything and those sounds have to get ported, for once, someone else is going to have to do it. I also, for those who know, Shiba made an Amtrak F40 reskin using the Caltrain one. The version he has on the TSC is not done. I added the Amtrak logos to the sides and nose. That version isn't out, and I plan on pushing that out the door for TSW 3 and 4 because I made it work before I gave up. So that people have the proper one. And I'll just add him as a contributor because it's originally his work, but the logos are me, and he never released that version. Oh, that's the other thing. There's another tank car reskin that I can at least release for TSW 3 and 4, which is Cajon Pass had its own tank car called that was the ACFX livery. That can come out. As well as another little mod, which is the Cool Story Bro Who the Fuck Asked CNW SD70 Ace. I want to release that. Now looking through my mods, I had some little joke livery mods I made for like the NS Gevos, like Nothing Special and Troll Folk Southern and stuff. All these little joke things I can push out the door if I want to. But that's mostly it. A lot of the mods that I wanted to get done are out in the general public, but for everything that didn't make it out the door, I don't want them. I'll leave it like this. as my note to this wonderful community that I've been part of for 5.5 years. If there's anything that you remember about my work from this sim at all, just know that I did it all for you guys. And I really mean that. If I didn't have so much encouragement, all the love that I got in all these mods, I don't know if I would have continued as long as I did. There's mods I made for myself, but a lot of this I made for you guys, and specifically for the US community. They've been done dirty for far too long, and I don't want my legacy in this community to be that I said fuck this and quit and made it so every project I ever had died and there was nothing anyone could do. I want people, if they want to carry on whatever legacy I left, I want them to be able to do so. And I don't care what lengths I have to go through. If you want my stuff in the later games, I will give you everything I can to help you achieve that goal. This community has been absolutely fantastic. And though I've retired, I'm still here. I'm never going to stop supporting the people that want to make this game better. I'll always be there for that. So, to everyone who's ever looked at my mods, downloaded them, streamed them, used them in videos, or ever had an ounce of joy or even a smile brought to their face by any work that I've done, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. It means more than you could ever know. And thanks for letting me be a part of this community. I love you guys. That's everything on my list that I can remember that I can showcase. If there's stuff for the TSW4 stuff, I'll gather up what footage I can showcase of what could have been. And again, I don't care if it's through Discord or through the email on my channel or anything. If you want to carry on any of this work, please let me know. I will do everything I can to help you. And with that, this has been Yuri of the Train Sim World community, signing off. Thanks for everything.